Well, this is another one of the really, really interesting cars at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway Museum, the Samson Special. And it had quite a history. Now, the chassis and the body, as you see it, was from 1939, but the engine was much older than that. And we'll go into that in a few moments. But anyway, Bob Swanson, a great midget car driver, drove this car in 39 and 40. 1940, he finished 6th. And then in 41, Deacon Litz drove it in the race after Shorty Cantlin from Paris, Illinois had been unable to qualify it. And then in 1946, it was on the front row with a young Sam Hanks at the wheel, and we'll go back and do a little trivia about this. But anyway, the thing about the engine, as I say, the car was built in 1939, but the engine was from 1928, and it is the 16-cylinder engine that was the brainchild of Frank Lockhart, and the car that that powered the car that tried to break the world land speed record at Daytona Beach in 1928. Frank Lockhart and a half a dozen others, Myron Stevens, Pop Dryer, a couple of others that I'm not mentioning right now, but holed up in the Stutz building. And the car, the land speed record car, was called the Stutz Black Hawk Special. And it's a little misleading because there was nothing Stutz about it at all. It's just that Fred Muscovitz, who now was the head of the Stutz Motor Company, gave Lockhart the space to build the car, which they did in complete secrecy. Now the engine, it's a 16-cylinder, it's a V16, it's actually 2 straight 8s that are laid in such a way as to form a 16. And this is what Lockhart proposed to try and break the world land speed record with at Daytona. They went down in February, and they had a problem. I think it caught fire, and Lockhart was obliged to drive it into the sea in order to extinguish the flames, and then they came back. And then in April, just prior to the Indianapolis Motor Speedway opening, and Lockhart had 2 cars entered for that, they went down, and he was trying to break the world land speed record. He did a run in one direction, I think of like 198 miles an hour, which was awfully close. And then on the return run, which they had to make either within 30 minutes or 90 or 60 minutes, I can never remember that, but they had to make a return run, it would be the average. A tire blew, and he was fatally injured. Anyway, the 2 Indianapolis cars were sold by the widow, and that's a whole other story. But anyway, in 1939, Riley Brett, Gordon Schroeder put this together to put that engine in this car. And so when Sam Hanks was on the pole, outside front row, I'm sorry, not on the pole, on the outside front row in 1946, the engine was 18 years old, believe it or not, and was an early out. Anyway, they ran, the car returned in 1948 with George Connor, but it didn't have this engine in it anymore. And so just to wind down, when Sam Hanks drove it in 1946, it was cream with red trim, and it was called the Spike Jones Special. And it was named for Spike Jones, the zany band leader, who was a big race fan and used to go to Gilmore Speedway and so on and so forth. And so he actually sponsored this car as the Spike Jones Special. And there's a little bit of a connection with a more recent driver, Spike Gelhausen, whose name is actually Daniel William Gelhausen, got the nickname Spike when he was a little boy. He used to get Spoon in his high chair, and he would beat on pots and pans and make a lot of noise. and his dad called him Spike because part of the Spike Jones band was, as I say, a zany band that used a lot of timpani and weird sounds for percussion. So anyway, the car was actually one of the first cars to go into the original museum on the corner of what used to be 16th and Georgetown. But that's the Frank Lockhart engine in there. It's just quite a special piece.